noon wind of salt. A bone-handled folding knife lay open on the porch. From the horizon, 10 figures in silk advanced into the land of Dorian Pike. Who shot first, asked later. 3 nights promised. Abel Crow would return. Before that, the granary burned, 1 man fell. The cheap soap smell revealed the traitor, and the knife blade would sink into the porch post. Which side would you stand on? The wooden gates screeched like teeth grinding each other. Wind pulled through the gap, made the wire hum one long note. On the porch table, the white bone-handled folding knife lay open, steel flashing like a nail in the fierce sun. Someone had forgotten to fold it. I leaned against the post, cold coffee cup, alkaline smell rising from the ground. The old dog under the table shifted, wheezing, eyes fixed on the knife. Dorian Pike stepped out, tall and thin, narrow shoulders, gray cloth shirt worn out. He struck a match. Flame burst small on his yellowed fingertip. Cigarette smoked, acrid scent mixing into dry wood. His thumb tapped rhythm on the gun grip like a man knocking on a locked door. His face flat as a plank. No, hello, no asking what I drank. Out in the field, dust rose in a band, as if someone had drawn a chalk line across the scorched grass. I squinted. In the white glare, 10 bodies peeled away from the heat shimmer, small at first, then larger. Worn silks, skirts biting dust, steps even, no drift. They came straight for the gate, not veering toward the ditch. At the front, a woman with black hair pinned by a scratched silver clasp. The clasp tilted, one edge clipped. That small detail struck my eye like a notch on wood. I did not yet know her name. Only saw she walked unhurried, as if she had already accepted something. Dorian shifted 1 foot. His boot sole struck the wood step. Thud. He let smoke go, slow. Wind broke it, scattered it into resin air. The folding knife stayed open. No hand touched it. On its blade clung a line of fine dust, splitting the light in 2. I looked left. Along the fence, an old survey post jutted. Carved letters faded. Hammer mark once driven into Dorian's soil, later pulled out, left a socket. I knew that story. Around here, folks didn't show off boundary posts. They showed off where the posts had been torn out. 10 women stopped before the gate. None touched the wire. Thirst cracked their lips white. One at the rear lifted her hem to shade the next from sun. Small move, quick, without a word. The group stood like one old tree, many scars, core intact. Dorian spoke hoarse, not meeting any face. Past the gate, there's no way back. He jerked his chin toward the plank sea. No trespass split down the grain. Long like a fishing line dragged deep. She swallowed, voice cracked in 2. Work. In trade for sleep. The last 3 words fell quick, like sand grains. She did not look directly at Dorian, but her eyes did not fall to dirt. They held at midpoint. Like setting sight on an invisible step. Dorian exhaled smoke again. Thumb tapped the gun grip. I pressed my cup down on the table edge, heard wood strain under weight. The folding knife lay a short space from my hand, close enough to reach, far enough to hesitate. Steel drank sunlight, cutting a white stripe into my eyes. I turned away. How many? Dorian asked. She counted, like habit learned. 10. She turned her head, looked down the line. None spoke. A girl with pale yellow scarf fixed cloth on her shoulder, pinky nail chipped. An older one stroked the red string in her hair, smoothed the edge of indigo kerchief. Such small acts spoke much that others pretended not to hear. Dorian ground the cigarette out. Ash fell on the porch, small as moth husk. He glanced past me, down to the knife. His eyes did not shift color, just paused 1 beat on the white bone handle. Who left this open? He asked, as if speaking to someone who walked past the kitchen and forgot to douse the fire. I shook my head. The dog yawned. teeth yellow. Wind lashed across the fence, wire hummed, road dust curled, rolled low like a small animal. I caught a scent past earth. Not smoke, not liquor. The smell of old hooves pressed into dead grass. I glanced behind the line of women. On the white glare ground, their trails still marked, bare feet and men's boot heels. One heavy stride, repeating steady. Not one of theirs. I swallowed dry, said nothing. The woman with the silver clasp lowered her hands. "Name?" Dorian asked. "Lynn," she answered. One word. Sharp. The others did not echo. Only one dry cough from somewhere in the line. A cough like metal tapping skillet gut. I saw Lynn's eyes flick quick toward the sound, then back as if they had never left. He dropped his gaze to her boots. Dust thick, salt crust breaking at the toes. Not a rider's shoes. Not a town runner's. A walker's many days. Those things show on boots before they show on lips. I looked at the knife. Edge wore a nick, like someone once filed scissors on it. The bone handle stained yellow from sweat. Once prized by someone, here it was only a tool of ordinary day. Looking at it, unease ran wrist to shoulder. My palm wanted to fold it shut. I did not touch. "Past the gate, you stay," Dorian repeated. No rasp this time. The line lay flat on the porch air, no threat. Just placed, waiting who would misstep. Lynn looked at the wooden sign, then at the half-open gate. The post had bark peel.
Slid his finger along the blade. Not on the edge, just on the steel belly to keep it still. He looked straight at Lynn. I saw in his eyes one old crease, a crease men cover by silence. "We cook, clean, mend fence," Lynn said. "No more asking." The last line was not a question, not a dare, just a stake hammered in ground. Behind her, the pale yellow scarf shimmered with one bead of sweat. It fell, left a dark mark on cloth. She did not wipe. Dorian pulled a chair, but did not sit. He leaned hip to the table. Left hand rested light on the knife handle, like on a tin of powder. Right hand tapped gun grip. Two opposite moves, as if he weighed both faces of an old coin. "Water's scarce here," I said, just to fill a gap. No one answered. The wind shifted. From the fields came the croak of a crow. The sign swung again, mid a different sound. Thunk, thunk, then silence. There was no child among them. All were past the age of children, yet one face was too young for the bruise on her collarbone. She looked past me, saw the knife. Her gaze paused one beat on the blade. I saw that pause. She pulled her eyes away, dropped them at once. The gate still half open, the road behind them empty. No flags, no wide brim showing, but dust far out still stood like grass undecided where to bend. I thought of night, thought of the dry well, thought of the rope bucket hanging loose, frayed, waiting for one pull to screech. I pushed the thought away. The gate stayed open. "You need hands for hay season," I said, glancing at the stack of dry braid near the barn. "Don't need," Dorian replied. That answer was to me and to the wind, but I saw his thumb stop tapping. Finger pressed down on the grip, holding steady. He looked at Lynn one beat longer. I heard my own pulse in my ears, beating, with the nails in his boots tapping light on the with salt streaks on earth. "Stand there," he said. "Don't touch the gate." The words light, neither pushing nor pulling. Lynn stayed put. She tilted her head enough for the scratched clasp to catch the sun once more, flashing thin like a fish scale. She did not blink, neither did Dorian. Wind stopped lashing. everything held for one breath. On the step, ash from the cigarette earlier gathered by breeze into a black streak small as a bird's mark. The dog stopped wheezing, ears up. The gate fell quiet, only the dry scrape of gun butt against Dorian's shirt edge. That was the moment things usually broke, not from a shout, but from silence. I lifted my cup. Glaze rasped my finger raw like hot sand. Lynn pulled her hand from the gate, left a faint dust streak on the wood. That streak trembled, then lay still. She stepped back half a pace. The whole line shifted with her, near the same instant, like a tree shivering before the wind changes side. Dorian looked at that dust streak, looked at no one else. The folding knife still open, blade aimed at the gate like an unintended point. I waited for him to fold it. He did not. He stepped inside one beat, came back out, hand empty. The old crease returned in his eyes, frozen again. He stood as if hearing something I had not yet heard. Sweat on his temple dried quick. A fly landed on his hat brim, flew off. 10 stood outside the gate in one straight line, shadows overlapping. Smell of dust, salt, fatigue. At the road's edge, a tumbleweed rolled, caught on the old survey post. Wind stopped. Sky stayed white. I knew something was coming from the side eyes could not see. Sign need not be large, only in the right place. Through or not, Dorian said, depends on one word. He did not explain what word. He did not hold out his hand, only his eyes set between the gate and the knife. Lynn heard. She tilted her head, then let it go. She did not ask again, did not beg. She drew in a short breath, then let it out. Wind blew back. The no trespass sign struck the post one solid thunk. That sound set the period on the silence. I knew someone would move next, but until that sound drained from the dust, all stood still, and the white bone-handled folding knife stayed open, waiting the first hand, waiting the first word to crack loose without permission, waiting for tilt, waiting for a betrayal still under skin, uncut. Waiting. Dorian lifted his hand from the grip, pointed his chin at the gate. Past the gate there's no way back. Voice dry as charred wood. The no trespass sign rattled once, hit the post. The woman named Lynn did not answer. She turned a little, blinked count of those behind her like tallying lost sheep. Then she set her hand on the latch, pushed open the other half. The line filed through, heels crunching gravel, dust rising thin. Porch path, eyes sweeping each face like taking numbers. The old dog poked out from under the table, sniffed their shoes, then slipped back. On the table, the white bone-handled folding knife, still open, blade aimed toward the gate. Dust clung around the edge, split into a crescent. No hand touched. Lynn led them into the backyard, under the tamarind's shade. One girl with yellow scarf hitched fabric tight on her shoulder, held it like a small secret. The oldest smoothed her indigo scarf edge, eyes drifting to barn, to dry well, stopping at the zinc water drum. Her fingers touched the red cord in her hair, a habit like a prayer. "Stay the night," Dorian said. "Work at dawn. No one in the house." He pointed to the barn. "Sleep." He pointed to the drum. "Drink. 2 dippers each." No one asked more. Lynn nodded, turned, guided them by hand. No noise. Only short, exact motions, as if done many times elsewhere. The dipper clanged hollow. Water poured into tin cups, sounded like distant rain. Some raised palms to catch drips, rubbed dirt clean from wrists, still marked by ropes, skin shifting from soil gray back to human. I moved the chair, pulled it out, but did not sit. Dorian drew a cigarette, struck a match, the small flash glinting off the knife's blade. He did not lift the knife, only glanced, as if to be sure it was still there. The wind shifted, smoke coiled at the porch edge, smell of charred wood pulling from the stove. In the backyard, Lynn took a curved needle, mended the torn hem for the girl with a chipped pinky nail. No words, only the sound of needle tearing cloth, small, steady. A moment later, Lynn returned to the porch with bare hands. "Work," she said, voice broken, but not trembling. "Cook, wash, mend, weed, for a place to sleep." Her eyes passed the closed kitchen door, the barn. Dorian looked straight at her wrist, where the rope scar darkened. He tapped once on the gun grip, then tapped again. "No asking," he replied. "No looking in the house. No crossing the south fence." He pointed at the empty socket where the boundary post had been pulled. Lynn looked at the hollow wood, understood, nodded. The words, "Yes, sir," did not come. She only nodded. The folding knife still lay there. Sun sliced across the blade, drew a thin streak of light on Dorian's wrist, then vanished. I unconsciously pushed my coffee cup a little farther from near the water drum. A strand of black hair caught in the wind, a man's old boot print. I followed his gaze. The print could have been Finch's yesterday, could have been another. Wind swept, blurred it. Night fell colorless. Storm lanterns hung along the barn, yellow-brown light, not enough for warmth. People lay inside, without words. Horses chewed straw, quiet. I stood on the porch, listened to insects drag one long thread of sound. Dorian came from the stove, a small oil can in his hand. He stopped at the table, the wood surface bare. The folding knife was gone. He stood straight, did not call, did not curse, only stared at the empty space on the table, until I saw his shadow lengthen, pressing over that spot. Dust still showed the crescent mark. The clean streak of the blade was gone, as if someone had lifted it, pocketed it, and crossed this porch without sound. Dorian turned his head, eyes moving over each lantern in turn, then to the barn. He did not ask who took it. He only lifted the oil can, poured more into the wicks, steadied the flame. The act neat, fingers not shaking. I swallowed dry. The earth here hid things by not saying. Dorian stepped off the porch, past the water drum, did not look at anyone. He went straight to the dry well. The frayed rope tied to the rusted tin bucket. He used his boot toe to sweep dust from the rim. A footprint showed, fresh, not his. Heel sunk deep, toe angled slightly left. One mark fixed longer, as if someone had stood listening. He bent down, touched the stone edge, found a thin, damp streak like breath just released. The night was dry, the well empty. The damp did not fit this hour. Dorian did not speak to me. He stood, looked into the dark hole. His hand on the holster, did not draw. A rustle from the barn, then still. Inside, they shifted, found places to lie. I heard cloth rub straw, breath quick, then slowing. Lynn's shadow passed in the barn door, hand holding an empty pot. She set it by the well, counted on her lips without sound. At 10, she looked straight at Dorian. He looked back. No brow raised, no reproach. She bent, wiped the pot's rim with her hem, slow. A move to stretch one more beat before something else began. Dorian stepped back from the well. His eyes went to the north fence. The wire sagged at one span wide enough for a body. Someone had slipped through that day. Could have been a calf, could have been a person. Wind drew past. Wire hummed faint like a dulled string, listening to something under the ground. I listened too. Nothing but insects and wire hiss far away. The night sealed tight. I saw a lantern flick once past the barn window, then dark. Footsteps moved toward the well, stopped, then turned back. Silence again. Lynn stood at the barn door, her shadow cut against the lantern flame, like a rock blocking a stream. She did not step in or out. Her right hand touched her neck, searched for something not there. I knew the habit of one who once wore something on a cord. She dropped her hand. The instant she saw my eyes, she turned in. Dorian lifted his hat. He sat on the step, boots set cross. His right hand rested light on the gun grip, left hand loose, unclenched, on his knee. His eyes fixed the center yard, the empty space dim, like a pit newly filled with sand. Everything pressed to one point. The missing knife, the footprint at the well, the sagging wire. But no words, only silence and watching, and a hand resting on the thing that could speak instead. Near midnight the wind changed. Smell of iron ore crawled in. The old dog groaned, clawed the floor, lay down again. An owl called 3 times. Even. To the north, pebbles rolled. 1, 2. I turned. Saw nothing but black. Dorian did not turn. He listened, then quiet. His fingers left the grip, rested on his thigh, opened like a fence newly set, firm but mute. I stood long until my legs numbed. Lanterns weakened, wicks eating oil. Dorian rose, went to each lamp, turned down the flame like closing jars. He stopped at the last, stared into the small fire still quivering. Did not blow out. Only lowered it until a thin line of gold clung to the wick. That light enough to show the porch edge, show the place where the knife was gone, show the crescent mark in the dust, show his boots set at the step's edge. Then he turned back to the well, did not look down, did not check the rope. Only stood 3 paces from the rim, like a man guarding a door that needed no lock. The tense pause held the house until morning. No one slept deep, no one spoke loud. The unsaid stood along the fence like shadows without bodies. I heard hoofbeats, far off before the rooster crowed a breath. That sound crossed the sky, did not stop. The old dog under the table stretched its neck, whined soft, did not bark. On the porch edge, the crescent dust mark of the missing knife still clear as a carved line. Road dust rose in a long streak, cutting the burned pasture. 6 riders drew in a jagged row, dark coats, shadowed hats, horse legs dusted with dry salt. 10 horse lengths from the gate they spread, held the middle like a rope pulled tight. The lead horse tilted its mouth, foam-spotted. Its rider tugged reins light. I saw the way he never yanked hard. The riding of one used to stopping others with eyes. Return the goods. He did not greet, did not mention price. Just tossed 2 words over the fence like a stone across water. His eyes slid over the barn, the outside stove, the zinc drum. then fixed on the porch door where Dorian stood straight, his shadow cutting the sunbeam in half. "Lynn," he called the name, voice flat. "All 10. The barn door twitched. Inside, cloth rustled, then stilled. Lynn stepped half out, not crossing the porch line. The silver clasp in her hair cast a worn gleam. She gave no answer, only fixed her eyes on the empty socket where the survey post once stood, then raised them straight at the lead rider. Dorian did not look at Lynn. He looked at the man. The man's mouth corner held an old scar, pulling lip down, as if once hooked and torn. His right thumbnail yellow like an old cigarette tip. On his belt hung a small leather pouch tied with a blue cord. That color out of place in this land. I saw Dorian's shoulder tilt slightly. He had recognized. So had I. "Abel Crow," Dorian said, low, not a question. The man grinned half. The scar twitched, as if skin wanted to whisper alone. "Your land still has wind," he said, eyes not leaving the barn. He jerked his chin at the yard. "Return the goods, then live through the season." The old dog quiet, the no trespass sign knocked. Dorian did not raise the gun. He only shifted one boot, sole scraping wood step with a dry sound, like knife tapping board. "Not for sale." 2 words, drier than drought grass. One rider on Abel's right snorted, hand on gun grip. Abel gave no sign. His eyes cut toward Lynn, one flash, cold as a fishhook. Lynn stepped another half pace. A pale yellow scarf shadow drifted behind her, then stopped. She turned her head faintly, counted with eyes, each person, each breath. She spoke low, just enough for Dorian and me to hear. "We escaped his camp, one faint, like a tooth tapping enamel. The white bone-handled folding knife, blade not fully shut, slipped from the pocket of the girl with the yellow scarf. It struck the step's edge, spun once, lay still in the new-angled sun. Steel flashed, sharp as an accidental glance. Every eye saw, no pointing needed. Dorian glanced, once, no one bent to pick it. The yellow scarf girl stood still, eyes fixed on empty air to my right, as if watching a bird fly. Her hand empty, pinky touching nothing. Lynn did not turn. But I saw the cord at her neck tense, one vein rise, then sink. Beyond the fence, Abel curled his lip a hair, said nothing. One rider on the left laughed through teeth, his horse pawed stone. Dorian asked nothing. He bent, lifted the knife with 2 fingers, not touching edge. The bone handle still warm with sweat of its last holder. He folded the blade into its body, the lock snapping shut, like a small clasp finding place. He slid the knife into his inner pocket, eyes never on the girl. His gaze moved to Abel, nothing else. Dust on the plain sank, as if to give room for the next words. Abel spat on the ground, crushed it. 3 minutes, he said, raising 3 fingers, not waving. Return the 10. We return peace. His eyes narrowed enough to brand my face, then let it go. He brushed his thumb against sweat at his ear. The scar at his mouth corner lifted 1 notch. Lynn looked at Dorian. No plea, no promise. Her eyes only lowered to the zinc drum, where the waterline mirrored white sky, then to the granary east. The shed stood apart, dry plank walls, rusted tin roof, door hanging by 1 hinge. Beside it, a straw broom leaned upside down. Head shaped like a bird dragged through mud. Wind pushed it, bristles trembled. Dorian turned that way. He walked past me, shoulder untouched, steps even,
His boots made the ground give a low sound, like a groan to itself. He carried no gun in his hand. The gun stayed on his hip, still as a sun-warmed snake. He carried only the small oil can once used for lanterns and a corner-torn matchbox. Things that had lain ready on the kitchen shelf. He took them, with the motion of one who knew where his house went dark. "No," Lynn said, soft. Only one sound, like cloth squeezed in hand. Dorian did not stop. He walked straight to the granary door. Smell of dry grain struck like seasons gone years. Inside, seed sacks stacked half the wall, mouths bound with rope, faded letters on their sides, the scent of old harvest turned into time, laid in straw. I stood on the porch, saw Abel tilt his shoulder like a man waiting for another's show to spare his own hand. Knife's hilt, and knowing it would not cut yet. Dorian poured oil. He poured into the straw at the door's edge, into the crack on the plank, into the seam of the lowest sack. The oil sank fast, leaving dark veins running the grain like blood surfacing. He struck a match. The first stick broke. He did not curse. He took the second, scraped it along the box, a small sound. Green flame at the tip flared, then yellowed. He set the fire to the oil, did not fling, did not toss. He only placed. The fire climbed as if it knew the path already. When it touched straw, it changed color, rose in 3 forks, swallowed deeper. Dorian stepped back 1 pace, shielded his face with his wrist, eyes still open. He watched the fire like a cattleman watches clouds to measure rain. Not a word. Did not look at Lynn, did not look at Abel. I heard the small snap of a rusted nail popping loose. A rat shot out, raced the yard, vanished in the stone heap. No one turned. Abel did not move for 3 beats, then tilted his head back a little, drew in the new smoke. His half-grin slid, straightened, thin. "Fool," one rider muttered through closed teeth. Abel gave no reply. He drew reins. His horse stepped half back, avoiding sparks. His glance skimmed the stove, the dry well, the footprints, not yet faded from last night. He had seen all. He only had not reached. Both he and Dorian knew what the fire said to the season ahead. The granary shifted voice. Tin roof cracked under heat. Old dust blew. Smell of long-dead rat broke loose, mixed with grain burning. He looked at Dorian 1 beat longer. I saw his quick count. The sum not good. He spat again, this time away from sparks. The granary roared. Tin roof dropped a corner, beams showing, black turning red. Dorian tore his eyes from the fence, fixed them on the flame, carving it in. He shifted boots so his shadow would not cut the blaze. He let fire consume the ground that had fed him 3 seasons. No one asked why. In the fire lay enough answer for those who watched through. A silence formed inside the crackle. Not in ears, in the chest where breath refused. Lynn dropped her hand from her hem. She bowed her head once, like hearing her name called from afar. She raised it, eyes locked with Dorian's 1 time. No words. In that lock was the recognition of one who knew true loss while still standing. Then she turned, waved those in the barn back, deeper, away from smoke. Abel pulled reins, turned his horse. He glanced at the granary once more. 3 nights, he said, like to the smoke. I'll be back. Land's gone poor, people cheaper still. He struck heels. The line withdrew, slow, dust laying over their track like cloth over a body. None of them looked at the knife now hidden. None knew the wind's shift would send ash across their night patrol. Flame ate the last sacks. Burned grain filled the lungs, bitter and tight.
Dorian set his hand on the porch table where the knife had lain. His hand stayed long, heat climbing into skin. He drew it back, saw the red mark in his palm, closed it, covering like an unhealed scar. None approached. None counseled. Southward, crows wheeled, settled in the tamarind, silent as listeners who did not believe. The granary fell whole. The last post crashed, a heavy thud. Ash flung into the morning sun, left a dark streak across white sky. I smelled tears unshed. Lynn stood straight, clasp tilted half an inch. Did not fix. She turned, ordered two to stamp embers, move straw, pull water barrel closer, keep flame from the barn. Her orders short, clear, no waste. Dorian heard all, said nothing. He only went inside, brought out an iron spade with dark handle, set it by the cooling heap, as if putting a period. Wind carried ash, the flecks clung to boots, to hems, to skin, to the chipped nail, clung to the old crease at Dorian's mouth. He did not wipe. He looked at the horizon, where Abel's dust had thinned, left only a faint line between sky and earth. The story turned its back on the season. I heard the north fence wire sing one short note, then nothing. Everything stayed still long enough for the choke to settle in the chest of the watcher, not escape, in sound. And in Dorian's coat pocket, the white bone-handled folding knife lay shut, latch tight, like a word not opened. Smoke still swarmed like black flies. Ash gathered on the porch step in a thin ring. Reins newly hung straight, as if checking his own fingers. No one said, "Thank you." No one asked, "What next?" The silver clasp in Lynn's hair had been crooked since morning, still unfixed. She carried bowls to the corner, waited for the others, set each before them, silent as one joining ropes without tying the knot. On the north fence post, a brass shell stood upright, its head cut with 3 notches. Sunlight bit into the grooves, made them shine like 3 saw teeth. No one spoke. The wind shifted. The shell fell with a tack, rolled twice, lay still. Dorian picked it up, pinched it between 2 fingers, studied the marks near, then far. He set it on the kitchen window ledge, the spot where a man outside could see when lifting his head. He rinsed his hand. Black drops slid from the cracks. Passing the scorched porch table, his nail tapped 3 beats on the wood, each a breath apart. Not the rhythm of a man in haste, the rhythm of a man not ready to speak. Afternoon broke its tone. The shadow of the fallen granary pulsed, hot ash breathing. 2 women with wet cloths stamped out embers with bare heels. The no trespass sign rattled once, fell still. Lynn carried a basin of bowls to the dry well, crouched, spread her hand to scrub each streak of dried soap, eyes fixed on the stone rim still damp from last night. She bent lower when Dorian passed. He did not stop. He touched the rim, lifted a black thread stuck with dust, let it fall. Before sunset, a horse shadow slid across the field, did not enter the gate. It stopped at the empty post, bent low, tossed something over the yard, turned back. The object hit with a clack, rolled to the porch step. A clod of dry earth pressed with 3 hoof marks. From the dust, thin laughter carried, then gone. Dorian bent, picked it up. He squeezed. It crumbled. Left in his palm, a short leather strap, knotted at the end in soldier's style. He hung it on the door hook. No one asked. Night came as if appointed. The outside fire sank to red coals. The barn quieted. 10 lay pressed together, legs touching, breath laying the ground for dark. Dorian dimmed lanterns along the porch, left one near the barn door. its yellow thread like a stitch. He entered the house, the door closed, latch scraped dry like bone. The porch table empty with its familiar absence. The white space of the folding knife on the wood looked through his shadow unfilled. At midnight, the wind turned, carrying the smell of a drained river. Dorian rose without sound, crossed the kitchen, the empty room, stepped out back. The barn door gaped one slit, wide as 2 fingers. He set his eye in the cloth. Dorian circled to the barn's side door, where a plank had been loose for long. He lifted it enough to slip through. The air stuck with hoarse straw, sweat-dried, ash clinging to his back like a second shirt. He walked on his heels, avoided the straw that squeaked. Beneath his hand, the brittle stalks broke like hair. He stopped at Lynn. The silver clasp lay crooked on her hair, the scored edge sunk in shadow. He slid 2 fingers under her pillow bundle, touched a cold object, the known catch of steel. The white, bone-handled folding knife lay there, asleep under a living neck. He drew it gentle, blade shut. Bone handle slid to his palm. In the lock something was caught. He lifted it to the lantern's crack of light. A straw strand, half a hand long, bent like a fishhook, not Lynn's, not from any black head lying here. It clung in the latch with a thin oil film, as if pulled through a hand that smelled of cheap soap. Dorian did not cough. He set the knife back in place, exact as before, edge in the same line. His fingers left the handle steady. He backed out, the plank lowered slow. The old dog on the porch shifted, blew one breath, lay quiet. Dorian stood in the door's shadow, listening to the wind's teeth on wire. He did not wake anyone, did not accuse. He walked back to the porch, sat on the step, hands on his knees, staring at night as at a black cloth threaded with one gold strand. Near dawn, a dry crack tore the yard, sharp as a spade chopping ice. Birds burst from the tamarind. The barn lantern went out, glass burst, sparks scattered. Inside, a short cry, thin enough to vanish into wind if not near. The one at the outer edge, the one with the yellow scarf for blanket, jerked, hands clutching belly, fabric darkened fast as ink spreading. A tin bowl toppled, rolled, sang one metal ring. Lynn dropped to her knees, pressed her bare hand on the wound, jaw clamped, tendons showing. No cry. Dorian rose at once, gun clear, cocked, soundless. He stepped into the barn. The muzzle slid past heads, past the crooked silver clasp, stopped at Lynn's forehead, arm's length. She did not lift her head. Her eyes did not take the barrel. She watched her hands pressed to the wound, her ring finger trembling small, teeth on her lip, no blood yet. At the corner of her eye, last night's flame left a cold streak. She did not beg. She did not shake. Sweat from her temple fell 2 drops, stopped at her chin, slid onto the wounded wrist. That silence stretched the length of a caught breath. Outside, a stone rolled, yellow scarf now soaked against her hand like a salt-seasoned leaf. Lynn pressed tighter, her back stiff as board. She turned her head once, locked eyes with Dorian, quick, deep, then bent again. In her eyes, a faint shine, like the gold hair I had seen in the latch. It passed, left no mark. Dorian tucked the gun under his arm, ripped the straw mat, tore strips, wrapped the wound tight. He did not ask who fired. He did not ask why the lantern died. His eyes went to the barn door, to the notched shell on the kitchen ledge, to the leather strap with soldier's knot on the hook.
All signs in place. Only the hand outside the fence missing. On the north fence post, a brass shell stood upright, head cut with 3 grooves. Sunlight struck the marks, lit them like 3 teeth. No one spoke. Wind shifted, the shell fell with a tack, rolled twice, stopped. Dorian picked it up, held it between 2 fingers, studied the cuts near then far. He set it on the kitchen window ledge, a spot visible to anyone looking up from outside. He rinsed his hand, black drops slipping from the cracks. Passing the charred porch table, his nail tapped 3 beats on the wood, each one breath apart. Not the beat of a man rushed, the beat of a man not ready to speak. Evening bent its voice. The shadow of the collapsed granary puffed hot ash. 2 women with wet rags stamped embers with bare heels. The no trespass sign clacked once, stilled. Lynn carried a basin of bowls to the dry well, crouched, spread her palm to scrub away soap crust, eyes fixed on the rim still damp from last night. She bent lower when Dorian passed. He did not stop. He touched the rim, lifted a black thread stuck with dust, let it fall. Before sundown, a horse shadow crossed the field, did not enter the gate. It stopped at the empty post, bent low, tossed something over the yard, turned back. The thing hit with a clack, rolled to the step, a clod of dirt, pressed with 3 hoof marks. From the dust, thin laughter carried, then gone. Dorian bent, picked it up. He squeezed, it crumbled, left in his hand a short leather strap, end tied with a soldier's knot. He hung it on the door hook. No one asked. Night came the way a meeting comes due. The outside fire sank to red coals. The barn quieted. 10 lay pressed together, legs touching, breath laying down the dark. Dorian dimmed lanterns along the porch, left one by the barn door, its thin gold like a stitch. The elder with red cord in her hair lay in the middle, hand across the belly of another, as if blocking wind. No whispers, only straw, rasping cloth. Dorian moved to the barn side plank, loose for long. He lifted it, slid through. Smell of horse, straw, dried sweat and ash clung on his back like a coat. He walked on his heels, avoiding the squeak of straw. Under his hand, dry stalks broke like hair. He stopped at Lynn. The silver clasp lay crooked in her hair, its scored edge lost in shadow. He slid 2 fingers under her pillow bundle, touched a cold shape, the known steel catch. The white bone-handled folding knife lay there, asleep under a living neck. He pulled gentle. The blade folded, bone handle slid into his palm. In the latch, a strand caught. He raised it to lantern light, a yellow hair of straw, half a hand long, bent like a hook. Not Lynn's, not any black hair here. It stuck in the latch with a thin oil film, as if pulled through fingers that smelled of cheap soap. Dorian did not cough. He set the knife back, same place, same line, same edge. His fingers left the handle steady. He backed out. The plank lowered slow. The old dog on the porch shifted, blew once, quiet again. Dorian stood in the door's shadow, listened to wire grind faint. He did not wake them, did not accuse. He walked back to the porch, sat on the step, hands on his knees, staring at night, as if it were black cloth threaded once with gold. By dawn, A dry crack split the yard, sharp as a spade on ice. Birds scattered from the tamarind. The barn lantern burst out, glass flying. Inside, a short cry cut, faint enough to be swallowed by wind. The one at the edge, the one with the yellow scarf for cover, jerked, clutching her belly, cloth darkening like ink soaking. A tin bowl fell, spun, chimed. Lynn dropped to her knees, pressed her bare hand into the wound, jaw locked, tendons rising. No cry. Dorian rose, gun clear, hammer drawn. No sound. He stepped inside. The barrel slid past heads, past the crooked clasp, stopped at Lynn's forehead. 1 arm's length. She did not look up. Her eyes not on the muzzle. She looked at her hands on the wound, ring finger trembling, her teeth on her lip. No blood yet. In her eyes, the flame of last night left a cold mark. She did not beg. She did not shake. Sweat rolled from her temple, dropped twice, fell on the wounded wrist. The silence stretched, a half breath. Eyes with Dorian. Sharp, deep, then dropped. In her eyes a thin shine like the golden hair I'd seen in the latch. It passed, left no mark. Dorian tucked the gun, tore straw matting, ripped strips wrapped the wound. He did not ask who fired. He did not ask why the lantern died. His eyes turned to the barn door, to the 3-notched shell on the kitchen sill, to the knotted leather strap on the hook. All signs in place. Only the hand outside the fence missing. The distant horse faded. Ash from the burnt granary drifted over the blood mark, turned red to black. The elder with the red cord in her hair sat down, opened her pouch of herbs, poured powder on the wound, packed cloth, tightened. She whispered a line too soft for ears, enough for her hand. Lynn lifted her head, rasped. Water. The girl beside ran, brought the zinc bucket low to keep from spilling. Dorian stood at the door, fit the broken lantern glass so the draft wouldn't cut through. Morning cracked night with a pale ring. News spread like fire through dry grass. By noon, wagons from town lined the road. The riders did not climb down. They stood on their boards, shaded brows, boot toes on the wood edge. One spat his stub, stared at the ash covering a plowshare. A woman in a headscarf shook her head, showing yellow hair bound in hemp cord. The cord shook with her breath. She lowered her eyes to the barn, saw the white bandage staining, pressed her mouth flat. Dorian stood on the porch, spoke no, come in, spoke no, go. He stood like a post. Lost the granary, one said, loud enough for a third. Land's done, another answered. Chinese women, a voice cut, half sneer, half curious. Their eyes slid over Lynn's crooked silver clasp, the bloodied yellow scarf, the 3-notched shell, stopped at Dorian's coat, where the folding knife was not, then moved to the barn door. None asked about the shot at dawn. None asked about the golden hair in the latch. They lingered longer at the ash on the porch edge where Dorian's red finger mark remained. A young man, new black coat, stiff collar, stepped down, careful of mud, came close to the fence, drew a small notebook, glanced, hid it, like fearing the earth would read his words. He gave no name, only nodded once to Dorian. Dorian did not nod back. Wind curled, carried cheap soap smell around the step. I looked down. A golden hair slipped from someone's boot heel, caught in a splinter, flashed once, died. The wagons turned for town. They left without hurry. Wheels rolled through, had lain beneath her pillow. She did not explain. She only closed a palm, hid the clasp. By afternoon, wind carried damp straw smell. Dorian pulled the porch tarp half down, gave shade enough to see without sun stabbing. He spread his gun cloth, laid each round in a line, not touching. The sound of brass on fabric like rain on dry leaves. He drew the white, bone-handled folding knife, opened the latch, found no golden hair. He shut it. The lock clicked clean. He did not pocket it at once. He set it on the porch table, in the first morning's place, for the sun to strike, for any passerby to see. Inside the barn, bandages changed again. Brown turned black. The wounded's breath, thin as wire, stretched across a post. Lynn stood, washed her hands in the zinc drum, water dark, then clear. She turned her eyes to the sagging north fence. She did not step forward. She only dried her hands on her worn hem, turned, said enough for all, lock the barn tonight. Dorian nodded, nothing more. On the kitchen sill, the three-notched shell still lay, its side hot under sun. The knotted leather strap shifted faint in breeze, not tight. At the porch step, the golden hair in the splinter was gone, wind or boot sole. But in the knife's latch, memory of it lingered like cheap soap clinging to cloth. Everything in place like a board set, waiting the first piece. From the north, silence thickened as if someone counted the house's breaths to strike on time. 3 nights. 1 gone, 2 left, long as hemp rope in another's hand. Dorian watched the sagging wire, the knife on the table, the clasp in Lynn's hand, then turned into kitchen shadow. He said nothing. The house said nothing. Only the drone of insects, like a small saw, kept time for the rest of the aftermath. Morning, cold as metal left overnight. North wind slid across the yard, lifted ash like fish scales. The porch step gray, marked by a boot trail cut at the edge. Dorian sat there, back to the post, narrow shoulders, sweat-stained gray shirt, boots powdered with ash, hat pulled low, eyes neither shut nor open, the look of one listening to a house breathe. On his knees lay the white, bone-handled folding knife, blade closed. Caught a thin line of sun. She said nothing. She set the bundle between Dorian's boots. It touched wood, dust rose like pressed breath. Dorian opened his eyes, slow. He stared at the seed bundle. His thumb tapped the knife handle, once and twice. He did not bend. Lynn lifted her eyes once. Their look met, taut as wire stretched to break. It left a cold mark, then gone. She turned to the field, drew one breath of salt and ash, then stepped half back. The seed bundle lay there, like a thing returned late to its owner. Land remains, she said, flat. Dorian gave no reply. He lifted his hat brim with 2 fingers, brushed off ash, lowered it. At his coat's pocket seam, I saw a dark stain, cheap soap oil lingering from the night the knife lay beneath Lynn's pillow. The smell rose in the wind. I remembered the golden hair caught in the latch when he found it in the barn. The smell and the strand did not belong to this house. The sound of wagon wheels on the trail faded, then gone. No horseman. The 3 nights promised had passed like hemp rope dragged across the chest, leaving a raw line. Abel did not return this morning, or he stood beyond sight, counting the breaths of this house, another day. Dorian looked at the uprooted marker, at the northern road rolling into sky, then back to his hands. He turned the folding knife open in his palm, studied the bone handle veined faint like a human finger. In the latch groove, no golden strand remained. He had pulled it out the night before, held it, let the wind take it, but the soap smell lingered, that false clean of town. The traitor was not inside the barn now, or still there masking the scent. In the barn, the elder with red cord in her hair stepped out, carried a bowl of herb water. She set it on the step, beside the charred seed bundle. The bowl chipped at the rim, water black like thin ink, steam sharp like bitter leaf. She met no one's eyes. She smoothed her indigo cloth, nail striking thread, a faint chime like needle on a pan. Lynn took the bowl, turned in without meeting Dorian's eyes again. She walked like one holding something in her mouth by the teeth. Sun climbed a notch. A crow dropped from the tamarind, landed on scorched tin, tilted its head once, beat wings, gone. From the gate, wind rolled a scrap of hemp cord into the porch, snagged in a splinter. Dorian stooped, picked it up. Same soldier's knot, tossed days before. He straightened it, tied it firm to the knife handle, tight enough, like binding a name onto steel. His fingers did the work without pause. I saw the stiff joint scar, a white line as he pinched the knot. Did not look at the barn. She looked at the knife on Dorian's knee. Her eyes stirred, then smoothed. The man beside her spoke words I did not catch. The wagon turned. Dust rose, coated the trail gray. A boot struck wood, sharp, final. Silence. Dorian stood. He held the knife in his palm like a man holding a bird he would not let cry. He walked slow to the porch post. Old timber, blackened, cracks running like veins under skin. He moved the scorched seed bundle aside, away from the old blood mark by a hand's width. He looked at it. His lips did not shape words. Only his throat swallowed once, dry. Wind pulled the soap smell from his coat pocket one more loop, let it die. He pressed the knife's closed blade against wood, no cut left. He gripped the bone handle, aimed the edge, drove straight. Timber groaned low, the knife bit half its length. He pressed deeper, blade buried, bone handle left showing, dulled in sunlight, point down. A bead of old sap welled, slow as sweat. Dorian did not pull back. He kept the knife lodged through breaths, until the post accepted it like a new nail. Then he let go. No one dared step close. I heard someone's teeth grind in the barn, then still, as if biting their tongue to remind themselves alive. Lynn stood in the doorway, her silver clasp fallen far to one side. She looked at the knife stabbed down, the bone handle hanging dim. That dim lit her eyes a thin mark. She drew breath, dropped her gaze to the seed bundle. She lifted it, stripped the indigo cloth, seeds mixed with ash, heavy as wet sand. She took a handful, set it in Dorian's palm. He did not lift. She let them fall on the porch table, the sound like rain on tin. Another handful she kept in her own hand, closed tight, fingers stained black. "Plant," she said. One word. Dorian did not nod, did not shake.
He looked at the seeds crusted with ash in his palm lines. He rubbed with his thumb. Ash stuck in prints, black. He blew. It lifted a little. What remained? Seeds warped, edges burned, half alive. He dropped them back into the cloth. Wind turned the indigo hem, showing a golden thread stitched long before, near the same shade as the hair I had seen in the latch. It caught in my throat, like swallowing heat. In that instant, the yellow scarf girl, who had bound her cloth into bandage the night before, stepped half out from the barn shadow. Black hair, chipped nail. Her shirt changed, hem clean. She glanced at the nice wooden-handled spade. He cut earth by the porch. 3 strokes, shallow. Soil dry white, broke like bread. He scattered seeds, steady hand, covered with a thin layer. No water. He buried the indigo cloth, said nothing. The knife in the post did not move. Wind rocked the bone handle, it glinted faint, hung like evidence. In the barn, the wounded breathed steady. The sound carried across porch, chilled my calves. Lynn stood still, her eyes fixed on the soil Dorian had closed. The silver clasp slid lower in her hair, near falling. She did not fix it. She turned, hauled out the zinc basin, filled, poured on the steps. Water ran over old blood, mixed ash to gray streaks, drew lines down into the yard, vanished at wheel tracks. Dorian passed the porch post, brushed near the bone handle, without touch. He entered, shut door, latch sounded like joints locking. I stayed on the porch, heard the north wire sing a thin note, like a string plucked by a nail. The yellow-haired woman in town